April 14, 1912. The most advanced passenger ship ever built is cutting through the pitch-black Atlantic. Look, we all know the Titanic sank. That's not a spoiler. But the true terror? It lies in the how and the why. How exactly did this modern marvel, carrying over 2,000 people, turn into a catastrophic disaster in just a matter of hours? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the terrifying chronological reality of that night.
Let's set the scene. You've got the North Atlantic at night, and the ocean is deceptively flat. I mean, literally smooth as glass. But somewhere out there, dead ahead in the freezing darkness, a massive iceberg is waiting, completely hidden. The ship is rushing headlong toward an obstacle her lookouts can't even see yet.
And what's absolutely crazy is the contrast here. Inside the ship, you've got this world of warmth, blazing chandeliers, fine dining, and just total security. People are turning in for the night. But literally an inch of steel separates all that luxury from a freezing, pitch-black, unforgiving ocean. It's this wild sensory juxtaposition that made the impending disaster feel so completely impossible to comprehend.
But here's the thing, the danger wasn't actually invisible. Up in the wireless room, operators were receiving multiple specific warnings about ice in their path. Take a look at this. An actual direct message from the steamship Baltic earlier that afternoon explicitly reporting ice fields ahead. It raises a chilling question, doesn't it? Why, with concrete proof of danger, was the ship's speed never reduced?
Well, that fatal decision brings us to the moment of impact. And man, this disaster unfolds with terrifying speed. 11:46 p.m. The iceberg is finally spotted. The ship turns, but it's just too late. There's no giant cinematic explosion. Instead, it's just a long, grinding scrape beneath the waterline. And just like that, a timer starts. The ship only has hours left to live.
Then we hit what is arguably the most fatal flaw of the entire night. 20. That's it. The largest, most celebrated ship in the world carried just 20 lifeboats. Now, sure, it was technically legally compliant for the era, but man, what a catastrophic miscalculation.
The math here is just brutal. You have 2,223 people aboard, but the absolute maximum capacity of those 20 boats? 1,176. So mathematically speaking, even if every single boat was filled to the absolute brim and launched perfectly, over 1,000 people were always going to be left behind.
But the tragedy gets even worse when you factor in human psychology. If the math spelled certain doom, we have to ask a really perplexing question. Why were so many of those early lifeboats launched half empty? Why on earth weren't people rushing to survive?
Well, put yourself on that deck for a second. The ship is enormous. It feels stable, and it's still brightly lit. Stepping out of that perceived safety and into a tiny, fragile wooden boat dangling over a black, freezing abyss, it honestly felt insane to them. Add in a total lack of organized emergency drills, plus this deep-seated belief that the ship was unsinkable, and you get fatal hesitation. Those lost minutes literally cost hundreds of lives.
Meanwhile, deep inside the ship, a completely different kind of desperation is playing out. Operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride are frantically hammering out CQD and SOS distress signals. For context, CQD was an early distress call, basically meaning all stations distress. That tiny wireless room suddenly becomes the ship's only fragile lifeline. They're typing furiously into the void, just praying someone, anyone, in the vast Atlantic is listening.
As those frantic signals go out, the physical reality of the situation really starts to set in. The damage spans across way too many watertight compartments. Freezing water is aggressively flooding over Deck E. The Titanic isn't just taking on water anymore. Her heavy bow is actively dragging her down into the ocean. That sense of safety passengers felt just an hour ago, it violently vanishes.
But at the exact same time, we get a glimmer of hope. The RMS Carpathia receives Titanic's frantic call. The Carpathia violently turns her wheel, drops everything, and pushes her engines to the absolute limit. She is speeding through the dangerous, ice-filled dark to reach those survivors. It becomes an incredibly agonizing race against the clock.
You can actually see it in the official records. The Carpathia heard the call and didn't hesitate for a second. It sets up one of the most terrifying races against time in history. The big question was, could a single rescue ship cross that immense, icy distance before the Titanic completely disappeared?
Tragically, no. By 2:20 a.m., the final lifeboats are gone. The stern of this massive, supposedly unsinkable ship rises high into the night sky. And then, she vanishes into the darkness forever.
It's a quiet, absolutely devastating moment that plunges over 1,500 people into an immediate, freezing fight for survival.
For the folks who actually made it into the boats, the immediate aftermath was just pure agony. Hundreds of survivors sat clustered together in pitch-black, freezing silence. Imagine that. You're surrounded by ice, floating in a vast, empty ocean, waiting for a rescue ship you aren't even entirely sure is coming. The psychological toll of those hours before dawn is just unimaginable.
When the Carpathia finally emerges at dawn and brings the stunned survivors to New York, a grieving world immediately demanded answers. I mean, how could this possibly happen? This absolute fury led directly to the United States Senate investigation. It was the beginning of a massive search for accountability.
And this investigation? It was a massive forensic postmortem. They summoned 82 witnesses, everyone from surviving crew members to first-class passengers. The goal was to meticulously reconstruct the exact chain of human decisions, the ignored warnings, and the mechanical failures that doomed the ship.
Looking at these original casualty logs really reminds us that every single statistic was a human being. The tragedy cut across all socioeconomic backgrounds. Wealthy business leaders, families starting a brand new life, and working-class crew members. They all found themselves caught in the exact same terrifying ordeal.
But as you can clearly see, survival was far from equal. The heartbreaking inequality of the evacuation is just glaring. While 60% of first-class passengers survived, only 42% of second-class and a truly tragic 25% of third-class passengers lived to see the morning. It's a very sobering reflection of the chaos and the rigid societal structures of 1912.
If there's any solace to be found here, it's in the legacy of these investigations. The horrific loss forced unprecedented maritime safety reforms worldwide. Adequate lifeboat capacity for every single soul aboard? Required. Mandatory emergency passenger drills? Implemented. 24/7 reliable wireless communication? Non-negotiable. These rules ensured no ship could ever legally sail with such fatal oversights again.
Ultimately, the Titanic wasn't just destroyed by a rogue piece of ice. It was destroyed by a cascading chain of events. We're talking ignored warnings, extreme technological hubris, and deadly, fatal delays in decision-making. It was the system that failed, not just the steel. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. We know exactly how the Titanic ended. We can clearly see the hubris and the missed warnings of 1912 in hindsight. But knowing the tragic cost of blind confidence, what unseen icebergs are we steering toward today? Are we truly prepared to recognize the deadly warnings in our own modern systems before it's too late?